This week, we will see all 10 conferences host their annual conference championship games, and for some, it will be their last. For others, it marks one step closer to locking in a college football playoff spot. But there was a time where conference championship games did not even exist. That was until Roy Kramar came along and changed the landscape of college football. This is the history of the conference championship game. This is the game that changed college football forever. But before we get into this, if you enjoy college football content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I am planning to release multiple videos a week this season. Also, let me know what your favorite story has been this year in college football in the comments section below. The Southeastern Conference would be the first FBS conference title game in Division I football history when it was first played on December 5th, 1992. It took place at Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama, and saw Alabama beat Florida, but how did it come to be? Well, the game was the brainchild of SEC Commissioner Roy Kramar, who took over the position in 1990. Kramar was a former head coach at Central Michigan, leading them to the Division II national title in 1974. He would then go on to become the athletic director at Vanderbilt in 1978 until he became SEC Commissioner. The SEC had a rule at the time that if you had 12 teams in your conference, you could split it up into 2 divisions and host a conference title game. This rule was introduced back in 1987 and was first taken advantage of by 2 Division II conferences. Those conferences were the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association and the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference. You see, before the invention of the conference championship game, most conferences contained about 10 teams, which allowed schools to schedule a round-robin schedule to decide the conference champion while being able to play non-conference games. Because of this, conferences never really considered adding enough teams to create a conference title game. But Kramar felt this could be game-changing for the SEC conference, so he started getting the ball rolling on it. But there was one problem. Remember how I mentioned that the NCAA allowed conferences with 12 teams to create the divisions and conference championship game? Well, the SEC only had 10 teams at the time. For the first time since its inception in the 1930s, the SEC conference was going to expand. Then Mississippi State Athletic Director Larry Templeton spoke on the idea, saying, "We didn't have a clue that there was expansion on the horizon until Kramar came into the AD room and says, 'What do y'all think about having a championship football game and going into divisions?' That was the first we knew about it. My initial thought was, holy mackerel. I knew this guy was smart, but he's smarter than all of us." Kramar had not just come into the room with the idea, he knew how to sell it. David Clymer of the Tennessean reported on May 31st, 1990, that the SEC had officially decided to expand beyond its 10 members. Buzz about a potential expansion had been prevalent since the spring in 1989, according to Rick Cleveland of the Clarion Ledger. But the conference didn't send any formal invitations. The SEC announced its intentions to expand and suggested schools across the country to reach out, should they be interested. Although there was apprehension on who the 2 new teams might be, Kramar knew he had Arkansas in his pocket as the 11th team. I looked into a lot of articles from the 90s to figure out why Arkansas left the Southwest Conference, and to my understanding it was done by a slight push by Texas, ironically, and according to Athletic Director Frank Broyles, barring dramatic change by the conference, it would no longer be competitive as it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and how competitive it wanted to be in the future. He said the popularity of professional sports in the conference's boundaries, 3 NBA teams and 2 NFL, and 2 Major League Baseball franchises, had lowered the Southwest Conference's revenues. Recent figures show that an average of 50% of the available seats are empty at Southwest Conference football games, Broyles said. Broyles went on to say, "If we thought the Southwest Conference could change its direction and get competitive for the 90s, Arkansas would have stayed. But we don't know what they could have done." They were concerned with the future of recruiting and how the fan base would be down the road, so the SEC was up to 11 teams, but still needed their 12th. According to the Tampa Times and the Orlando Sentinel at the time, the teams being considered were Florida State, Miami, Texas, Texas A&M, South Carolina, and Virginia Tech. They expected to make the decision move relatively quickly. South Carolina had left the ACC in the early 1970s and was playing as a Division I independent. Although they were a founding member of the ACC, they had left due to various spats with the league. When the SEC move happened, there were also talks about the Gamecocks returning to the ACC, which head coach Sparky Woods would have preferred at the time. Instead, Florida State went to the ACC, while South Carolina went to the SEC. Kramar now had his 12 teams to meet the NCAA requirement, and in 1992, the SEC Championship was played, and it was a classic between number 2 Alabama and number 12 Florida. Bama entered the game on a 21-game win streak, with their last loss coming to Florida. They won the game and went on to play Miami in the national title game. Bama went on to win the national title in the Sugar Bowl that year, winning 34-13. That first SEC title game changed the course of college football history. Had Florida won that game, it would have cost Alabama the national title, and it would have never gotten picked up by other conferences. The SEC would have had egg on their face, and Kramar may have been without a job. But it worked out for them, and everyone around college football took notice. In a column published the next day, Berman Bisher of the Atlantic Constitution wrote, "This may turn out to be the pace setter. The SEC Championship was closely watched by conferences around the country. Hoist the flag and see how it fluttered. Maybe years down the road, people could say they were at the first SEC Championship game 25 years ago." Kramar was applauded by everyone in the SEC and was talked about as the man who was ahead of his time. Nearly 28 years later, conference championship games are the norm in FBS football. All 10 conferences have one. The Big 12 was founded in 1994 when all 8 members of the Big 8 joined Texas, Texas A&M, Baylor, and Texas Tech of the Southwest Conference, making a 12-team league. It would be the second conference to host a conference title game in 1996, the first season they played. The MAC played in their first conference title game in 1997. The ACC began their conference title game in 2005, while the Big 10 and Pac-12 created theirs in 2011. In 2011, the Big 12 dropped to under 12 teams and was unable to play a title game until a rule change in 2017. The Mountain West had their first game in 2013, followed by the American in 2015, and lastly the Sun Belt in 2018. In January of 2016, the NCAA approved championship games for smaller conferences, provided the championship game featured either one of the top 2 teams at the end of the full round-robin conference schedule, or the winner of each of the 2 divisions, with each team playing a full round-robin schedule within its division. Following that change to the NCAA rules, the Big 12 reinstated its championship game in 2017, operating with 10 teams in a single division while playing a full round-robin schedule. Prior to the 2022 season, the NCAA gave conferences full freedom to determine the participants in their championship game, and the Pac-12 scrapped its football divisions, effective immediately. On the very same day, the NCAA passed this rule change. The Mountain West and the ACC followed for the 2023 season. It feels like the only way to make the college football playoff during this 4-team format was to win your conference title game. Vlasic told the NCAA, "Now it's almost impossible not to have a conference championship and expect to be in the running for the playoff and the national championship game." As of October 2020, of the 24 teams from the 11 different schools that have participated in the college football playoff, only 3 had made it without winning a conference championship game: Ohio State in 2016, Alabama in 2017, and Notre Dame in 2018. The Irish were independent that season. Conference title games will only become more important with the new playoff format beginning in 2024. The new 12-team playoff format will see the top 5 ranked winners of the conferences receive automatic bids to the college football playoff, with the top 4 ranked conference champions receiving a bye to their second round. Since every conference champion is decided by a championship game, as of that season, the game can serve as a de facto playoff qualification game. The conference title game has become so ingrained into college football, it seems wild to think of a time before it ever existed. But when it was first created, it was viewed as weird by many. The creation of the conference title game changed college football and may have led to the craziness of the conference realignment today. Roy Kramar retired as SEC Commissioner in 2002 and was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 2023. His legacy will live on forever in college football as the man who changed the college football landscape. What do you think? Do you like conference championship games? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out one of my other videos YouTube thinks you will love right here. Don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe for more college football content. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to embrace the grind.